Good morning, everyone. My name is Kenneth C. Durango from BEd 1 Section A. First of all, I would like to say thank you to our instructor, Ma'am Jennifer Bulardo, for giving us or the Group 2 an opportunity to tackle or to discuss the Chapter 3 of our topic, which is the modifiers of human act. So what is the modifier of human act? According to Google, the modifiers of human act is to influence people action negatively. But in my own opinion or my own knowledge, the modifiers of human act is to make partial or minor changes to something which is the people action negatively. According to Paniso 38, the greater the knowledge and the freedom, the greater the voluntariness and the moral responsibility. It means, if you have a broader knowledge, you can help someone else. As a person, we must have also a good moral character to help other people. Man does not act in a vacuum. He is an organism responding and reacting to stimulus. His total makeup is the sum of all experience, his personal background, education, social upbringing, political persuasion, religion, and personal aims contribute largely to his development and behavioral preferences. There are 9 modifiers, but we focuses on the 5 modifiers, which are ignorance, passion, fear, violence, and habits. The other modifiers are hypnotism, brainwashing, mental conditioning, and cultural imposition. The first modifier is ignorance. What is ignorance? It is the absence of knowledge which a person ought to possess. Ignorance of the law excuses no one. It implies that one should not act in the state of ignorance, and that one who done a wrong may not claim ignorance as a defense. Example number 1, a lawyer is expected to know his law. Number 2, the doctor his medicine. And number 3, manager his business operation. There are 3 types of ignorance. First, vincible ignorance. Second, invincible ignorance. And the third, affected ignorance. So first, what is vincible ignorance? Vincible ignorance can easily be reminded through ordinary diligence and reasonable efforts. Example, the ignorance of a visitor regarding in particular address in a certain place is vincible, since he can easily ask information from a policeman or pedestrian. The second types of ignorance is invincible ignorance. What is invincible ignorance? Invincible ignorance a person possesses without being aware of it or having awareness of it, lacks the means of rectify it. Example, a cook might be unaware that the food he is serving is contaminated. The third types of ignorance is the affected ignorance. So what is affected ignorance? Affected ignorance is a person keeps by positive efforts in order to escape responsibility or blame. Example, an employer refuses to read a memo precisely so that he may be exempted from its requirement. So there are 3 principles of ignorance. These are invincible ignorance, vincible ignorance, and affected ignorance. First is the invincible ignorance. What is invincible ignorance? Renders an act involuntary. A person cannot be held morally liable if he is not aware of his state of ignorance. Example, a waiter who is not aware that the food he is serving has been poisoned cannot be held for a murder. The second principle is the vincible ignorance. What is vincible ignorance? Does not destroy, but lessen the voluntariness and the responding accountability over the act. A person who becomes aware of the state of ignorance he is in has a moral obligation to rectify it by exercising reasonable diligence in seeking the needed information. Example, a waiter who suspects that the food he is serving has been laced with poison has the moral obligation to ascertain the fact or at least forewarn the guest about his suspension. The third principle is the affected ignorance. What is affected ignorance? Thought it decreases voluntariness, increases the accountability over the resultant act, interferes with intellect, it decreases accountability. Refusing to rectify ignorance implies malice. The malice is greater when ignorance is used as an excuse for not doing the right thing. Example, a child who refuses to be guided by his parents has only himself to blame for his wrongdoing.
Hi guys, may adlaw sa tanan. By the way, I am Glenn P. Garsuta and I'm a group 2. So my topic is about passions or concupiscence. Tendencies towards desirable objects or tendencies away from desirable or harmful things. So, mga tendencies, guys, na buhaton siya voluntarily or involuntarily, which is maayo pa na o dili. Former, positive emotions like love, desire, delight, hope, and bravery. So, ang kanitang former is mga positive siya. Then latter, ang kanipong latter day is mga negative emotions, kabaliktaran. No? Kabaliktaran sa former, which is negative emotions like hatred, horror, sadness, despair, fear, and anger. Then, passion are psychic response either be moral or immoral. So, it is like depende, no? Depende siya sa imong utok whether buhaton nimo ng butanga or dili, whether moral or immoral. Passion are either antecedent or consequent. So, passion is either mubuhat ka voluntarily or involuntarily. Then, antecedent are those that precede an act. It may happen that a person is emotionally aroused to perform an act. So, antecedent passion is something ka nang kuan, something na naay reason before mo act gani voluntarily. Ang example niya is, Lenti Ipon calls to his sweetheart or to plot the murder of a rival. So, mag-base siya sa iyang buhaton kung unsa iyang nakita before siya mo buhat og action. Consequent passions are those are intentionally aroused and keep. So, unlike sa consequence, no? These are intentionally. Kabubuton niya na buhaton. No, ang example niya is, a young man may deliberately arouse himself by reading pornographic magazines. So, it was maybe nahimo nimo silang it was maybe nahimo na silang excited to do that certain things. That's why they are voluntarily doing it, no? Naga-kuan jud sila. Naga-volunteer jud sila, no? Mo na siya ang consequent passions. So, mara to guys. Salamat.
So before I start, let me introduce myself first. So my name is Lloyd Orvin P. Salazar. So today I will discuss those actions done under the circumstances. So we have fear. Fear. It is the disturbance of the mind of a person who is confronted by an impending danger or harm to himself or loved ones. So fear. It is the disturbance of the mind because we think about ourselves. Just like you see or you hear something that you don't want to experience, especially with your loved ones, make a way for you to keep them out of danger, especially for yourself. So, acts done with fear are voluntary. A person acting with fear is acting in spite of his fear and is in full control of himself. Example of this is climbing a cliff, flying an airplane through a storm, diving for pearls, arresting a notorious killer. So, our mind is very advanced when it comes danger. Not that we don't want to experience different things, because you are afraid of what will happen, so that you will think of anything. Next is acts done out of fear. However great, is simply voluntary, although it is also conditionally voluntary. So here are some example of voluntary people. So example is the child read this book out of the mother. Next is the employee volunteers to work overtime out of fear of of being fired by the boss. So wala na sila paki sa ilang kulba. It's because siguro di nila gusto masayang ang time, so we need to work hard, like the employees and also the child na nagbasa siya og book na walay nagbantay sa iya. So yun. So acts done because of intense fear or panic are involuntary. So example is a person in a state of a panic might jump from the 12th floor of a burning building. So that is the example of acts done because of intense fear. Next is violence. Violence refers to any physical force exerted on a person by another free agent for the purpose of compelling said person to act against his will. Example is bodily torture, maltreatment, isolation, and mutilation. So here are some principles of violence. Number 1 is external actions or commanded actions performed by a person subjected to violence to which reasonable resistance has been offered are involuntary and are not accountable. So example of external actions is if the person who threatened to kill him, then someone turned into him so that he would not be threatened that he was the one who wanted to die, he should look for the person who should blame him to show that he was not the one who wanted to kill. If he finds out that he has no evidence and it is proven that he threatened to kill, he will face violence and he can be imprisoned. So that is the example of external actions. Number 2 is elicited acts. Orders done by the will alone are not subjected to violence and are therefore voluntary. So, one of the story in these lines, 1,000 heroes who had suffered death instead of surrendering their will to that of their tormentors. It means that is, if you are right, you only have the right to fight even if the replacement is still alive. Because first of all, we will not just rush for no reason when your decision is right and you have no regrets for what you did. You should fight for what is right. So that is the example of elicited acts. So our last part of actions done under the circumstances is habits. Habits is a lasting readiness and facility born of frequently repeated acts for acting certain manners. Second is, from the word habit forming that we use to refer to certain experiences shows how easy it is for one to acquire habit. Habit forming na gusto nimo like sleep on time, eat healthy foods, etc. So that is the example of habit forming. Next is, habit is not easy to overcome or alter. Alcoholism and smokers find it almost impossible to reform. So example is, when that person likes what he is doing, we can do anything because we have different preference in life. So once a person hilig siya og mugamit og alcohol o hilig siya mugamit og smoke, whether you like it or not, once habit na sa tao, habits, buhaton jud na niya. Mo stop lang guro na siya kung na siya bation sa iyang life. So yun. So here are some principles of habits. First is actions done by force of habit are voluntary in cause unless a reasonable effort is made to counteract the habitual inclination. Number 2 is habits are either good or bad. So it's your choice. It's because it's your habits. Kung kabalo na ka unsay tama o unsay mali. It's your choice. Next is habits are voluntary in cause because they are the result of previously willed acts done repeatedly as a matter of fact. So those are actions done under the circumstances. So thank you for listening my report today and God bless.
We are the only that can manifest what are atong gusto nga i-manifest. It's either good or bad emotion or good or evil, because kita rin nagdala sa atong emotion. Then its third is a person who nourishes his feeling of hostility toward another is more prone to acquire the motive for inflicting harm on the object of his hatred. So, once a person that always nourishes his feeling in anger, of course, there many people will be hated him. Why? Because he nourishes his feeling in the anger. Hostility, it means puot. If there's one person that always nourishes feeling in anger, pagsilos, inana, jealousies, tungod kina sila, there be hatred from another. Because, why? He have a hostility in her heart, in her emotion, in her feelings, her or his feelings. That's why he will become hatred, or it can be harm in other people. There'll be a fighting, there'll be a something doing mahimo na dangerous siya. Then the next are the refinement of emotion. So what is refinement? So I searched this word. Refinement is the process of removing impurities or unwanted element from a substance. So that is a refinement. So refinement of emotion. Refinement of emotion. Emotion as a factors of affecting human motivation and behaviors. If the one human or one man that cannot control his emotion, it will be affected their motivation and behaviors. Why? Because if he always anger in himself, he always look down because of their emotion in their sight na mas lahi ko nila mga kuan sila ana because of their emotion. So it be lost her or his motivation and behaviors can be changed. They will be depressed because of this. So all we need is to control our emotion to avoid affecting to avoid the affecting of our motivation and behaviors. Second is man is expected to act not only with his mind and body but precisely with his heart and soul. Do you believe that? That man, so in my opinion, I believe because we act because the mind and the body is only an instrument for me, and the heart and the soul is the mao jud ang atuang kuan. Kaya ang heart mo magdikta sa mind that you do that. Oh, kaya ang mind ang musulti na pud sa body. That's why mind and body will be an instrument only. Heart will and soul will be expecting to act. So ang heart jud ang soul para mubuhat jud ta or mo act. Then second is doing good for another is not a virtue unless it comes from the love of what is good. So, excuse me po. So ibig sabihin, but ang doing good for another without love is not a virtue. Because pag magbuhat ka ug maayo sa imong isig ka tao, there's a love. Naadyoy love. Why? Nganong gitulungan mo? Kung imo ka nang kaaway, imo ka nang tabangan? No. Because you have a love in each other so that you help them. And doing good with a love is a virtue. Next is Bernard. According to Bernard Harris says, that education through proper discipline and cultivations of emotional life is in many ways more significant than the tense training of willpower. The aims of ethics is not to return man into an efficient machine to do things. Rather, it hopes to transform man by inner spiritual conversion. So, in my thought, in this sentence says that we only who can discipline our emotion, or we can discipline and cultivate our emotion. So if we feel that our emotion is grabe na, we can discipline it, we can adjust, we can transform. If grabe kayo katakakususa tungod sa atong emotion, isog kaayo like me, dali ra kayo kumakuan sa akong emotion, dali ra kayo kumasuko. That is an emotion, but I discipline it and I convert it in the inner spiritual conversion. So I always magpaubos na ko kanunay muna ang kuan spiritual, tungod kay God will guide us. That's why emotion can in a proper discipline we can transform man by any spiritual conversions. Next is Filipino refers to us. Kagandahan ng loob, it refers to attitude. Mostly of the Filipinos people have an attitude of kagandahan ng loob. Kanabit nung naamoy bisita nga kini ang wala mo'y kakuan pero mangutang mo tungod kay di mo gusto nga kuan abihon ninyo. That is called kagandahan ng loob. Unlike in other country that kailangan pa ka mo text mo anha ra kay para mahandaan ka, kay kun di ka mo text di kanila makuan, di ka maapil sa ilang mga pagkaon. That's a Filipinos Filipino cultural nga bisan pagkuan hatagan jud na nato og mga pagkaon. That's why that I'm proud that I am Filipino citizen. Next is pagmamahal. Mostly of the Filipinos have a pagmamahal, have a love. Why? Because ang pagmamahal, kahit na iniwan ka niya, sinaktan ka pa, minahal mo pa rin siya kasi nga mapagmahal ang mga Pilipino. Maunawain. Yun ang mga tao nga bisan pag giunsa na kaniya, gisakitan na ka, kusi pero maunawain ka because Filipinos have a long patience. Then may pakiramdam siya. Baka may iba ka na. Yan, may pakiramdam ang mga Pilipino nga kapag ikaw ba ay nasasaktan ka na ba? Kung ano yung ginagawa mo. So, yun. May pakikiramay. Mostly of the Filipinos have this attitude. May pakikiramay. Why? Because every Filipinos, if they have malungkot sila, if there's sadness, worriness in their life, there's something, friend, family that na maduulan nila na makikiramay at handang mo maminaw si mo. Of course, every Filipinos matulungin. Then masayahin at hindi magpagkunwari. Mostly of the Filipinos masayahin jud bisan pa we face in this pandemic, but we always smile. We face this pandemic with a big smile. Kaya alam natin makakaya natin to at we fight it and we pursue it. na makayanin natin to defeat the coronavirus. Din hindi mapagkunwari. Yan ang mga Pilipino. So, that's all. Thank you. So, I hope nakasabot mo sa among report. And God bless you and thank you for all. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bells para updated mo. Joke lang. Sa mga to,